Hi everybody and welcome to Azure Lowlands in the Netherlands. I'm super excited to be here today together, of course, with my co-host who will introduce herself in a moment, and of course joined by amazing guests. We have Paula who had her keynote just now, but just before we go to the guest, I want to wish you a very warm welcome. My name is Isidora Katanic. I'm a Microsoft MVP based in Switzerland. I'm very excited to be a little bit in my homeland here in the Netherlands. So let's head over to my lovely co-host who will also introduce our guests.
Well, that was kind of funny, right? Because I reached out to you and I wrote you something in English because I was completely like, oh yeah, no, Isadora is like, she speaks English and you speak Dutch. So yeah, that's something I learned. Anyway, my name is Floor. I'm a staff developer advocate at Ivan, which is a database as a service company. And I'm also a Microsoft MVP since this year. Yay! Very exciting. And we're joined here by three wonderful guests. So to my right is Maarten Goed from Wortel. You're also an MVP since 2007. That's a very long time. And a regional director since 2015. You're the founder of Experts Live and, of course, the Dutch Microsoft Security user group.
So much stuff. And I think I'm a dinosaur MVP. I'm not sure in what category I fall, but having switched 5 categories since 2007, it feels like dinosaur MVP actually. But
well, if you switch categories, then it stays fresh, right? Like
it does. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And next to you is Paula, of course. You just came up here from your keynote. So I'm sure we want to hear about the keynote a little bit as well, because the people on stream didn't actually, well, they did actually watch it, but we'll have some questions for you. And you're the founder and CEO of Secure. That's correct. And then to the far right is Jeroen. Hi Jeroen.
There.
You've been with Microsoft for 14 years.
Yeah, 14 years already.
Oh
and I was a former MVP because I feel left out like this. I was an MVP on Microsoft Groove, and there were only like 5 people in the world on Microsoft Groove.
Wow.
So then we killed the program. My fault. But then, that's...
Was it?
No, it wasn't. No,
do you want to talk about it?
I was still proud when he said in OneDrive he always saw like when it failed, you got that groove.exe was killed.
Yeah.
And that was my baby.
That was
okay. So loving it. It was a long time ago.
And you're a host of a security podcast as well.
Yeah, we
right?
have Security Life Hacks. That's a podcast that we host in the Netherlands. It's like 2 times per month or 3 times per month. Depends on the topics, what we do about all the updates around Microsoft security. We have some guests as partners, but also from customers. We also had Maarten Goed already as guest. So a lot of cool stuff coming up. Also about the basic measurements in the Netherlands around cybersecurity. So stay tuned for that. That's absolutely
Is that podcast in English or in Dutch?
It's in Dutch, but we're moving to English. Yeah, the next ones will be in English. Absolutely.
Cool.
For inclusiveness.
Yeah, great. I love it.
Yeah.
Big fan. All right. Very cool. Do we want to get started?
Yeah, let's get started. Well, speaking of podcasts, I believe Maarten also runs a security podcast. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's the trend in 2022, right? Everybody needs to have a podcast. If you don't have one, you feel left out. But it's called Security Insiders, and we talk to all sorts of people around Microsoft security. And they could be a program manager at Microsoft or some sort of expert. And it's quite refreshing to get some perspectives, just fun stuff, what they're doing, but also some tech stuff. Yeah, so I love it. Do you have a podcast, Paula?
No, actually, I do not, but I do have a blog.
Okay.
Which is a little bit old school still, but there is one.
It's so 2020, it's not.
Yeah, there's so many interesting security things to talk about, right? But maybe in the future.
Yeah, who knows? Well, I mean, you can be invited as a guest on either of these podcasts.
Absolutely. I see this as an open invitation
here.
to you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Always with pleasure.
We'll reach out to you for sure. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I was just curious. Are people more careless? Like this is in line with your keynote. Are people more careless now that they're working from home when it comes to security topics?
Well, yeah. So looking maybe a little bit from a different perspective, we can see the number of attacks they have increased during the pandemic. Yeah, so there are many aspects of that. One thing, of course, is that the companies, they had to shift from the certain setup of the infrastructure to the remote one, allowing remote access in various ways, not necessarily controlling it, and so on. So that also opens a door. But that door has to be entered, and that door is entered by the employees, by users.
Yeah.
And for phishing, for example, increased, actually there are different stats, but from the 2017, I've heard that it actually increased by 13 times. So, of course, there is the big threat over there. And also this carelessness is definitely there because if you're sitting in front of the computer, dog is barking, kids are crying, and you really want to have your job done, then you might be like a little bit frustrated, and then you may just take some like quick moves, quick steps,
maybe.
exactly,
Yeah.
so that at the end you're gonna simply run the code that you don't want to run.
Well, and I think you also saw that they did have often some security measures within their company headquarters or some of the branch offices,
Yes.
but having some security measures for specifically remote work has not been top of mind until the pandemic happened and people started investing a lot, of course, on what they needed to do.
Yeah, it's not like a fire drill that we did. Like this happens to us it's like in a minute. So everybody said, go home, go work. And basically what happens is that nobody tried it out what would happen. And a lot of companies weren't prepared for this. Like also you see now companies being more prepared, but from the start of the pandemic you saw like, well, this is not going to work, and how do we keep productive? And I think that was the biggest challenge. So they made like a decision between secure and productivity. And it was productivity, and then shit hits the fan. And then it became like, oh, we also need like security.
Yeah.
That's an interesting remark because I think in your keynote, Paula, you said planning and specifically crisis planning
Yes.
is the topic for 2022.
Definitely. So the more we are prepared, the better response obviously we got if something happens. So hopefully it will never happen, but assuming that it will happen, let's do everything we can do so that we not only recover quickly, but react in our monitoring solutions quickly so that we can cut off a certain identity that is a danger for us very quickly. We can, for example, have a very well established monitoring to build a full picture of what happened, and that all comes out from the capability of the technology.
Yeah, and this is for large companies. It's maybe easier to do that scale, but also imagine like smaller companies where you have 5 and 10 people. How do you go about security? And that's what I hear a lot now these days. People going like, yeah, we're just a small company and we don't know what to do, and I think that's a challenge, right?
Absolutely, and the challenge is, of course, with what kind of solutions we use. But we've got so many solutions that are available. Yeah. So, for example, from Microsoft, we've got Office 365 that can be implemented even by the smaller companies. So it's like a technology that's available for the biggest became available to even the smallest. Yeah. And then you've got that security capability on board built in. It's just a matter of enabling a couple of things that right now, and it's very convenient for smaller companies too. You've got a bunch of checkboxes literally that you turn on multi-factor authentication. It's not a solution like in the past.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like click and then you got it. So that makes our world definitely more secure. And the rest is education, the rest is monitoring, and of course just using the technology that's there.
Yeah, and we see also for companies now we have Microsoft Defender for Business, like an extra add-on. And also what you see is that we have for partners we have the Lighthouse. You also are in these type of programs so that you can monitor from your customers what's going on. So what is Defender doing? What's happening on the network? And those signals are being read and also being transmitted to the partner, so they can react faster, even for smaller companies. So that's quite good. And for bigger companies, we have stuff like Sentinel, where you guys experts in. But
it's like you said, it's the security defaults that are on by default that is very helpful. But if you have those plans though, like should you require companies to test them, like Jeroen said, fire drill them like you do in the real world?
Absolutely. So well prepared and well tested. These are the two things that go along with each other. And that's why we like to call it a crisis management, because incident response sounds very polite, doesn't it? Yeah.
Order.
Yeah, right. Like
the incident response.
For the incident response, please. Yeah. The crisis management sounds like, we got a crisis, we have to manage it, and what we're going to do, right? Yeah. So and then we got the attention of executives, because somehow in a company we have to find budget for that, right? Yeah. So it's a technology that we have to manage. There needs to be a team, skill, and everything. So how are we going to get that? Well, we got a crisis that we have to manage, and quite often the executives turn to IT when there's an issue. So now these IT on cybersecurity, particularly, and executives, the management, goes very much together in business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because you had some great statistics actually on the ramp up, like you said, on how many ransomware attacks and other attacks are happening. Do you feel boards are stepping up their game? Are they taking ownership and notice and priority?
I think things are getting better.
It's getting better. We're looking at the license to sales now, just kidding. But it's getting better and better over time. Yeah. If I'm smiling more and more, then we're getting happier. Yeah.
That's good. And Jeroen, before you mentioned, we didn't have a lot of time to prepare for this situation, right? So, even though you should do proper planning, in this case, we didn't have a lot of preparation time. And suddenly there were kids at home as well with us.
As well, yeah. Well, mine is still too little. She's not bothered with security. But I was wondering, if, for example, you, Maarten, you have 3 teenagers at home. And now, of course, with this online hybrid world, the kids, I assume, are also a lot online as well. How do you prepare your kids or explain them the importance of security and being in a secure environment when they go online?
Sure, yeah, no, it's certainly top of mind. And actually, the worry I have with my teenagers is, aren't they becoming hackers? Because they're becoming so proficient at it. Yeah. It's like, I need to worry that they're not stepping out to the other side of the game.
Well, but it could be ethical hackers.
They might be ethical hackers, which we should all endorse, because we need those. But I think in general, it is something they grow up with, because they're digital natives, so they do recognize that this is the world they live in. And we see, well, depending on schools and the social groups you're in, that they're also stimulating each other to worry about, hey, you should have some sort of password manager, or you should do this, or not share all your personal data online. There are some things they worry about. Other things we can add, like what we know from our profession. But it is hard, because it is their life. Everything is digital. So with the transition to pandemic and for them to get education online, it's actually something to worry about. And schools in general don't have the best IT, and certainly not security, of course.
No, there's no multi-factor authentication at the school. So what I did, I went to the school and I go like, okay, you guys, and now I'm working from home. Shouldn't we do something about, because they were going into Teams and they're going into chats and all stuff like that. Productivity was key, but security wasn't. So we tried to explain them to use multi-factor authentication, and the remarks you get like, that doesn't work, and though it takes a lot of time and effort to get that up and running. Eventually they did, because it took a lot of persuasion. But it's really key to see from how do we get these schools also very secure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And my kid, I got 2 children, 19 and 16. And the one from 16 still living at home. And he's like a little hacker already, because he comes to me and says, Dad, can you open up port number? Can you open up port number XYZ whatsoever, because my Nintendo Switch needs to do this, or I tweak my Nintendo to do stuff. And I'm going, no. But eventually you have to figure out how to do it, how to help him, because if I don't help him to do the things he wants to do, he finds another way, what might be more trickier. And I also see that in offices when we say we can close everything down, but if we do that, they will find another way. And that's the worrisome. That is a balancing act.
I do think with all these children, like next year, Azure Lowlands, we should have like a kids track.
Oh, that is
I
love the idea. I love the idea.
That'd be really cool.
Absolutely. So really, as a parent, you also felt the urge to go to the school and to make it more secure, to ensure your kids are, of course,
absolutely. And also in the beginning was also to make sure they are up and running, because we saw a lot of schools that we have Teams but weren't connected to an Azure AD or whatsoever. So there was no agenda functionality, so they have to just wait to see popping up like, the meeting has started by the teacher, and then they need to go in. So that definitely failed. So a lot of lessons learned from that time. And
so I'm sure also as a parent, you must felt proud that suddenly your kid is also in your area of expertise, and you can really like contribute, like, suddenly they're using Microsoft Teams. It's something you have been working for, well, not since forever, but since it's there, more than 5 years. To really also have that now.
Forever.
Forever. It was always there, always there. When we were kids, we were not on MSN Messenger.
Obviously,
we were on Teams. MySpace.
IRC, but
No, thank God I weren't using Zoom in that case, because I wouldn't understand what to do.
Using what? Sorry?
The dark side. No, just kidding. They were using Zoom, but they were using Teams. A lot of schools have that in place. You know, they already have all of these things in place. Same as for companies. They don't use it, and I think also to your point, what you're showing today is there's so much that you can do. I saw some cool things that you were doing. I go like, this is not on by default, and it should be on by default to protect yourself. And the same goes for schools or companies. And you have this in place, use it, because you can be toast whenever.
I'm also curious, what are some security best practices that people, share that you wish that they would stop sharing because they actually don't make any sense?
Okay, so and 2 days later,
I see.
yeah.
Bring it on.
Yeah, so depends really like from what perspective you look. Yeah, if we look at from the home user perspective, let's say, I think that nowadays the best way, the best number one tip would be to rethink how do we actually manage our passwords. So however obvious that sounds, that will be just simply to turn to the direction of the password manager, implement that, and enable the multi-factor authentication whenever we can. So whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, or whatever the portals we use, that's something that protects us from the simple password guessing. I really like
it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Something like that.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Noted.
You're good.
So
With a post-it on
we're
my
all
screen.
good, exactly. So it's always very funny, like when, like of course we can describe it in a way that when someone says that, hey, my account in Instagram or Facebook got hacked, it sounds so cool, like almost we were in a movie. But for real, that hacked means that most probably either our password was simple, and by just a simple password spray, it was either guessed. Or another option could be that someone managed to get access to our computer and then our password was stored in a browser and this is how it leaked. So this process in general isn't very advanced. And we can easily protect from that. Being like one of the most important leaks right now. And another part would be, of course, just to, and I like to describe it this way, maintain your cybersecurity context. It's a very romantic statement, meaning that we just need to be very aware of what surrounds us. So what kind of apps we use, what kind of websites we browse, what kind of information we share, who do we contact with, who are my pals. If my old friends on Facebook in a messenger, they write, hey, I'm in a city right now, like borrow me €100 because sorry pal, like to bother you and so on, that's probably something wrong. So that context in general, it's so important to maintain right now because hackers are coming outside and they don't know it so well as we do. So that's our weapon here.
Yeah, and we overshare a lot. You know, if I look at some out of offices I get from people, I'm going like, okay, I know everything now about you. I know who your colleagues are. I know the email addresses. I know the phone numbers. I know like everything. So
I know where you are, how long you're there, when you're coming back home.
Exactly. So all of this stuff people are sharing, and it's. I try to tell also organizations, why are you sharing all this stuff? Okay, internally I get it, but externally, it's there's an option to share internal or externally. And there's a different way to go about that. And that oversharing is really what we're seeing a lot of. And is it necessary to share telephone numbers, email addresses, whatsoever from a lot of people that are not a direct contact of you? I doubt that.
But how is, because you said awareness is key, understanding the context you're in. But let's say you're less proficient with all of the technology you have in your life and you get this really nice message which looks real but is perhaps properly done spear phishing or phishing. Somebody like your aunt or your uncle will click on it and you go like, you shouldn't have done it. But on the other end, why is tech not like helping them out and just stopping it? So what should you do about that awareness? What helps? Yeah,
so this is the moment where we like step into the technology layer. And that's just mandatory like step to make. So therefore, of course, for example, in Windows OS, you've got multiple things that are turned on by default that are from the irregular folder writing. So these are the protections that home users can leverage. Of course, we've got antivirus solutions like Defender and so on on the home computers as well that are recognizing these threats. So it's all about not really stopping it, but it's all about minimizing the risk.
True.
So if we've got like, let's put it maybe this way, the younger family members that are more tech savvy, then that's also their role. So the whole awareness, it's not just like this person's responsibility, but that's our whole responsibility here, how to make other people more secure if they don't know. So for sure they will know someone that knows. And that's basically the flavor that we should apply right now to our approach to cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Maybe to ask Jeroen, as you said, as companies or employees, they're oversharing, they're sharing too much information. What would you give as an advice for a company to actually train their employees in the topic of security? Like, what are some best practices or advices you could give to companies to actually make that awareness among their employees?
I think it asks them also about logical sense, because employees are not stupid. So there's technology, you have to explain how technology can work for them. You can also test stuff. We have these possibilities to test if we can send out a fake email message with a link, and if they click on it, you go to a training or something like that. So I think it's good to train all these people and to show them what the risk is, because also for them it benefits also in their personal life. Like you were saying, like these WhatsApp messages that you see from give me $100 because I have a new phone or whatsoever.
Right.
The same goes for work. So I think making sure, and we have these adoption programs at Microsoft with the partners that we are working with, that train and in fun, in gaming even, you have games around it to train how to cope with this. Like for the sense of oversharing, why is it not just enough to say, okay, if you want to have more information, go to info@company name instead of go directly to my colleague with this email address and this phone number. Maybe it's not maybe what you want. Maybe you want to give that direct information, but we're living in a world that is not always possible anymore. So we have to cope with the fact that things are changing, and that's what we're trying to show them with these kinds of adoption trainings for users. Because we had adoption training using with technology, how to use Teams, how to use Word, how do I create a channel and put people in Teams chats and whatsoever. So now we got 1 million Teams channels whatsoever. But now it's the next step. How do we approach the end users to leverage the fact how to work with technology and use common sense for that matter? And I think that's the new ball game we're in right now.
So user adoption is
from the other
very
side.
important.
And it is not just only technology or one thing. We often challenge companies and ask them, like, how would you do the same thing if you work in a factory and you want physical safety for somebody operating a machine? And they sum up probably like 10 things they do, like training somebody, doing something with peer review and safety managers on the floor and so ever. And that's the same thing we say. Like, do it programmatically, strategically, think about all of the things together, and then make it something that's in the DNA of the people operating those IT technologies.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point that you also made about that sharing thing. Yeah, because we live in a sharing world. We are putting pictures on Instagram and different social media and so on, and that is also used for people's businesses, right? So that actually it makes me to wonder, just openly, and I'm super interested about your opinion. Like we talk of security, we say sharing it should be less of that for our protection. But on the other hand, we've got Instagram that is, for example, we use for business, for earning money, and someone still shares information maybe about being supermodel or something like that exposes a person's places, that where we are staying right now, where we are living, and so on. So what kind of trend you think that's gonna, or direction that's gonna evolve to?
I think if you look at it and how much we're sharing and the stuff that people are showing, it's going to be more and more. We see everybody's on TikTok or whatsoever, and it wants to show off. I think we should be more realistic and also tell people about this. And if you're doing this, be aware that there's a risk around it, and then you need to be more protected even on the back-end side. So I think, again, it's that balance that you were looking for, okay, I'm sharing this, what is the impact that I'm making around that, and is there like a way that I can be sure that I'm safe on the back-end side? So even better protection, higher protection, whatsoever, than others might need.
Yeah, I love it. So one thing just to add, because I totally love the idea, I think it would be really nice to see maybe in future, I'm very pragmatic, and not social media. So to look, for example, when you install an app like TikTok or any other, like to go through the mandatory, maybe short, but cybersecurity training that explains to you what kind of things you should be aware of and what kind of things you should not be sharing. And now it's all yours. Whatever you want to share, you share, but we warned you,
Yeah, but I think because there's money and incentives into the platform, and the owners of those platforms run off of that money, is that to some degree, like governments and laws should also be applied on the things that should be done from those companies' perspective, because what you just mentioned won't happen on their own initiative, I would suspect. I would figure that, well, as a community, we need to start regulating those bigger platforms to some degree, because we'd like to share, that's in our people DNA. Those companies have a money incentive, so I think to some degree, like the European Union and et cetera, should help on close some of those things, mandate where data is stored, mandate how they will be shared or not will be shared, and like you said, maybe some sign-up questions to make it safer.
We managed to actually appear to regulate these cookie allow when you get to every single website. So maybe that doesn't sound that difficult, you know.
Yeah, that's a good thing. If you are a user and you want to use stuff like that, and you allow everything for that. Can I have access to your camera, mobile phone, electronic patient file, whatsoever? You know, like we almost donate blood to go on Instagram. So we accept the defaults, and that's not what we should do, I guess, always. And keep people thinking. And sometimes also the feeling, and it triggered me because I'm working on a campaign right now around SMB, and I was looking at the language that we as Microsoft are using towards the small businesses. And I go like, I don't even understand what they're stating. So maybe we should make it easier for people to understand in more lively language what's it all about. If I talk about multi-layer firewalling and you're a cheese farmer, you go like, what?
What?
What are you talking about?
Even?
Are you talking about me?
Explain it to kids.
Exactly. That's what it should be. And I think we're overcomplicating sometimes the fact that the language that we're using is maybe too difficult for people to understand. And that also, then you will accept the fact that you are reading it. You go like, okay, it should be okay because I don't understand what's all about. It's like the little prints in the contracts.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Scroll down,
accept. That's what we do, right? And but do you really read the end user license thing? Right, and that's everybody's going. Oh, what? But that's basically the problems that we're seeing. It's sometimes so with language overcomplicated. Can I explain it to my dad? Can I explain it to my grandmother? And if that's the case, I think we're on the right track. But for now, I see we have a lot of issues still to cover, and sometimes we use language. I go like, I don't even understand what it's all about.
Yeah.
It's also a very complicated topic.
Yeah.
But has it been more complicated over the last 10 years? In your keynote, you told that you were in this profession already for 10 or maybe even more years.
We're not talking about that.
Oh, sorry.
A few years, just a
few
years of experience.
You have some experience.
Your working career.
You are in the working career. Okay. Have you seen some sort of change over those years? Has it become more complicated or?
There was a time where it became actually more complicated because at the very beginning we had only antivirus and firewall that was for most of the organizations, let's say, enough. And that enough was coming from the statistics because there were not that many attacks that were happening. But the attack platform in general, that the path that hackers are picking or the nature of an attack, it doesn't really change. So we're dealing with ransomware. The first ransomware was, I think, in like 1979 or something like that. So you could not recover your data. You were just you had to send money to the PO box. So here we go. But there was a moment where it got more complicated. But then organizations were moving towards like, oh, we need more security solutions, this, that, firewall configurations, and so on. I remember consulting from that time, and now we have like. Everything is just kind of getting into simplification. So the more we're able to turn on the checkbox to enable the feature for security, the better for us because it's so much. So many solutions, so many threats, so many things to mitigate. So I think it's a good direction. And if we toss it with awareness, then basically we are getting into the good place.
And do you think like cloud security or cloud in general, does that change the whole dynamic at all?
So cloud and in general approach to the cloud is more friendly now. Yeah, that's definitely the thing. Yeah, in the past, so everybody was wondering, okay, what's cloud and so on. Now we don't really even think about it, to be fair, because cloud gives us so many benefits that we cannot get on-prem. That is just not even reasonable. I don't want to sound unpopular here, to use at least some of the cloud solutions. Of course, not everybody can do, to be fair, because of the various types of data, governments, regulations, whatever. Yeah. But in general, the development, the growth, it's in cloud right now. Yeah. So it's a natural direction.
Yeah, and it's I would say easier to manage, but it's more structured to manage. You know where it is, where the data is. You know you are what cloud provider you're working with. Usually one of the biggest, Azure, of AWS, Google, or Azure. in this case. You know what they can bring to the plate also around security. So that helps, I think, for the accessibility also to use the cloud in that case.
Especially also from one perspective that I think touches every single company in the world right now that wants to grow their cybersecurity team. What's that? Yeah, so basically to hire right now a cybersecurity consultant, poof, so hard. Yeah, even the person that has some kind of an experience in security has a good approach. These two things, it's super hard to find. So cloud also gives us this backup for the skill set. Yeah, so you don't have to hire the team that's gonna be like doing all the things that you will need, but then you move towards a solution that is kind of like out of the box. Yeah, and then basically that kind of fixes you the gap that we have right now in the skill set.
Yeah, I think the other thing with the skills gap is a lot of these open positions, they ask for like 10 plus years of experience, right? We have a shortage of people. This industry or security has not been, it's been around long, but it's been maturing over the past 10 years. You can't have an entry-level position with 10 years of experience, can you?
And experience in what, right? Like in configuring, for example, ISA server from 2016 and so on. So definitely not the case. So this is what every company pretty much has a problem with this, and that can be fixed by a bunch of solutions. So we're kind of replaced by robots, but there is definitely a gap that we have to address. Yeah, just to be reasonable here.
That's why it's always good that we have a lot of partners also doing this and can help out. That's what we as Microsoft really like, because we see it's a partner-led organization, and we see a lot of partners coming into this space and helping out. I think that's absolutely a good thing, and also the artificial intelligence that we have in the machine learning around what's going on the internet. If I look at Microsoft, we have the right number is I think 24 trillion actions per day that we monitor on the internet as it goes around security. You cannot do that by hand.
Not with a brain.
We need machine learning and stuff like that. So it's really key to see how we can combine all of these efforts from specialists that we need, from partners that we have, and the technology and the machine learning stuff that we have to get it to a safer place.
It's a bit of a minority report.
Yeah, exactly.
Take the ball. It's going to happen there.
Right. You need to be predictable what's going to happen. And we saw it with Log4j. This was also that came into play, and we saw like all the world's panicking. But we were able to react real quickly to that and making sure that the people who were using security tools were aware that this was happening. So I think that's a good thing that we're doing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now that we're talking about open source vulnerabilities.
Floor is
on.
Excellent.
And that from Microsoft's perspective, right? It just push it to you.
I was wondering, because we talked about ransomware, right? But there has been something in the last year or so, or years maybe, also something like protestware. So we saw maintainers change their code to actually protest, for instance,